possible being in which they were. How is this feat performed? How does the pulling pull? How do I get my hold on words not yet existent, and when they come, by what means have I made them come? Really it is the problem of creation, for in the end is, how do I make them be? Real activities are those that really make things be, without which the things are not, and with which they are there. Activity, so far as we merely feel it, on the other hand, is only an impression of ours. It may be maintained, and an impression is, for all this way of thinking, only a shadow of another fact. Arrived at this point, I can do little more than indicate the principles on which, as it seems to me, a radically empirical philosophy is obliged to rely in handling such a dispute. If there be real creative activities in being, radical empiricism must say, somewhere they must be immediately lived. Somewhere the that of efficacious causing and the what of it must be experienced in one, just as the what and that of cold are experienced in one, whenever a man has the sensation of cold here and now. It boots not to say that our sensations are fallible. They are indeed, but to see the thermometer contradict us when we say it is cold, does not abolish cold as a specific nature from the universe. Cold is in the Arctic Circle, if not here. Even so, to feel that our train is moving when the train beside our window moves, to see the moon through a telescope twice as near, or to see two pictures as one solid when we look through a stereoscope at them, leaves motion, nearness, and solidity still in being, if not here, yet each in its proper seat elsewhere. And wherever the seat of real causality is, as ultimately known for true in nerve processes, if you will, that cause our feelings of activity as well as the movements which these seem to prompt, a philosophy of pure experience can consider the real causation as no other nature of thing than that which even in our most erroneous experiences appears to be at work. Exactly what appears there is what we mean by working, though we may later come to learn that working was not exactly there. Sustaining, persevering, striving, paying with effort as we go, hanging on, and finally achieving our intention, this is action. This is effectuation in the only shape in which, by a pure experience philosophy, the whereabouts of it anywhere can be discussed. Here is creation in its first intention. Here is causality at work. Footnote. Let me not be told that this contradicts the first essay, Does Consciousness Exist? See especially page 32, in which it was said that while thoughts and things have the same natures, the natures work energetically on each other in the things, fire burns, water wets, etc., but not in the thoughts. Mental activity trains are composed of thoughts, yet their members do work on each other. They check, sustain, and introduce. They do so when the activity is merely associational, as well as when effort is there. But, and this is my reply, they do so by other parts of their nature than those that energize physically. One thought in every developed activity series is a desire or thought of purpose, and all the other thoughts acquire a feeling tone from their relation of harmony or oppugnancy to this. The interplay of these secondary tones, among which interest, difficulty, and effort figure, runs the drama in the mental series. In what we term the physical drama, these qualities play absolutely no part. The subject needs careful working out, but I can see no inconsistency. End footnote. To treat this offhand as the bare illusory surface of a world whose real causality is an unimaginable ontological principle hidden in the cubic deeps is, for the more empirical way of thinking, only animism in another shape. You explain your given fact by your principle, but the principle itself, when you look clearly at it, turns out to be nothing but a previous little spiritual copy of the fact. Away from that, one and only kind of fact, your mind, considering causality, can never get. Footnote. I have found myself more than once accused in print of being the asserter of a metaphysical principle of activity. Since literary misunderstandings retard the settlement of problems, I should like to say that such an interpretation of the pages I have published on effort and on will is absolutely foreign to what I meant to express. I owe all my doctrines on this subject to Renouvier, and Renouvier, as I understand him, is, or at any rate then was, an out-and-out phenomenist, a denier of forces in the most strenuous sense. Single clauses in my writing, or sentences read out of their connection, may possibly have been compatible with a transphenomenal principle of energy, but I defy anyone to show a single sentence which, taken with its context, should be naturally held to advocate that view. The misinterpretation probably arose at first from my defending, after Renouvier, the indeterminism of our efforts. Free will was supposed by my critics to involve a supernatural agent. As a matter of plain history, the only free will I ever thought of defending is the character of novelty in fresh activity situations. If an activity process is the form of the whole field of consciousness, and if each field of consciousness is not only in its totality unique, as is now commonly admitted, but has its elements unique, since in that situation they are all dyed in the total, then novelty is perpetually entering the world, and what happens there is not pure repetition, as the dogma of the literal uniformity of nature requires. Activity situations come, in short, each with an original touch. A principle of free will, if there were one, would doubtless manifest itself in such phenomena, but I never saw, nor do I now see, what the principle could do except rehearse the phenomenon beforehand, or why it should ever be invoked. I conclude, then, that real effectual causation as an ultimate nature, as a category, if you like, of reality, is just what we feel it to be, just that kind of conjunction which our own activity series reveal. We have the whole butt and being of it in our hands, and the healthy thing for philosophy is to leave off grubbing underground for what effects effectuation, or what makes action act, and try to solve the concrete questions of where effectuation in this world is located, of which things are true causal agents there, and of what the more remote effects consist. End footnote. From this point of view, the greater sublimity traditionally attributed to the metaphysical inquiry, the grubbing inquiry, entirely disappears. If we could know what causation really and transcendently is in itself, the only use of the knowledge would be to help us recognize an actual cause when we had one, and so to track the future course of operations more intelligently out. The mere abstract inquiry into causation's hidden nature is not more sublime than any other inquiry equally abstract. Causation inhabits no more sublime level than anything else. It lives apparently in the dirt of the world as well as in the absolute, or in man's unconquerable mind. The worth and interest of the world consists not in its elements, be these elements things or be they in the conjunctions of things. It exists rather in the dramatic outcome in the whole process, and in the meaning of the succession stages which the elements work out. My colleague and master, Josiah Royce, in a page of his review of Stout's Analytic Psychology, has some fine words on this point with which I cordially agree. I cannot agree with his separating the notion of efficacy from that of activity altogether. This I understand to be one contention of his, for activities are efficacious whenever they are real activities at all. But the inner nature both of efficacy and of activity are superficial problems, I understand Royce to say, and the only point for us in solving them would be their possible use in helping us to solve the far deeper problem of the course and meaning of the world of life. Life, says our colleague, is full of significance, of meaning, of success and defeat, of hoping and striving, of longing and desire and inner value. It is a total presence that embodies worth. To live our own lives better in this presence is the true reason why we wish to know the elements of things. So even we psychologists must end on this pragmatic note. The urgent problems of activity are thus more concrete. They are all problems of the true relation of longer span to shorter span activities. When, for example, a number of ideas, to use the name traditional in psychology, grow confluent in a larger field of consciousness, do the smaller activities still coexist with the wider activities then experienced by the conscious subject? And if so, do the wide activities accompany the narrow ones inertly? Or do they exert control? Or do they perhaps utterly supplant and replace them, and short-circuit their effects? Again, when a mental activity process and a brain cell series of activities both terminate in the same muscular movement, does the mental process steal the neural processes or not? Or on the other hand, does it independently short-circuit their effects? Such are the questions that we must begin with. But so far am I from suggesting any definitive answer to such questions that I hardly yet can put them clearly. They lead, however, into that region of panpsychic and ontologic speculation, of which Professors Bergson and Strong have lately enlarged the literature in so able and interesting a way. The results of these authors seem in many respects dissimilar, and I understand them as yet imperfectly, but I cannot help suspecting that the direction of their work is very promising, and that they have the hunter's instinct for the fruitful trails. End of chapter 6.